Hey, I'm Vlad with GlobMarble, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to stamp with our Z-shaped stamps, which I like a lot because you can get really creative with them, and there's not just one way to use them. So stamping on concrete is a little bit too permanent, especially for the amount of variations I'm going to be showing you. So I'm going to create something I like to call a practice station. If you want to skip this part and head straight into the stamping, you can skip to this point in the video. So instead of stamping on any type of overlay or actual concrete, I'm going to be stamping only on sand. And it's important to figure out which type of sand you want to use. I have two types of sand right here, some regular sand and white sand. This stuff is way more expensive, but I noticed that its grains are a lot bigger than the ones over here. This one's very fine, while these grains are bigger. I want that because that's going to let it be a lot more fluffy than the regular sand once I add water into it. Adding water to the dry sand helps it retain the form and the way it looks after you stamp it way better, and it also makes it a lot more fluffy. Think almost like those little sandcastle molds that you make. If you put dry sand into them, they just fall apart, but if you bring wet sand, they stay in the shape of that sandcastle. I don't really have a ratio of water to sand that I use. I kind of just eyeball it to make sure it's the right consistency. I'll show you at the end. Too wet and it's going to become way too firm. Not fluffy, that's the opposite of what we want. And too little and it's going to start falling apart. So I'm going to add some water and then use our mixer to mix that all in. So the amount that I initially poured in, it was basically the perfect amount. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how that consistency should look. You can see it's very fluffy. It leaves the impression in very nicely, and it's not easily disturbed. It doesn't fall apart. This is the consistency of sand I like to work with. The next step is spilling this out and then making sure that it's all the correct thickness that you need for stamping. How you find the right thickness for your overlay or your sand is we go ahead and we measure the distance between the deepest and the highest point on your mold, and then set your gauge rake to a little bit taller than that. The gauge rake has these little sleds that are adjustable, and this is the thickness I'm going to be using it at. By the way, all the tools I'm using right now are available on our website, including this heavy-duty bucket and that mixer. And of course, those molds. Then we're going to go ahead and trowel out all these lines and any imperfections. If you leave these lines, it's going to show up on the finished product, so just take it from the sidelines, put on some of this extra sand, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with that full trowel. So while we gotta forget to leave the stamps, this thing did dry out a little bit, so here's a perfect example of what to do when it dries out. You see over there, those light spots. That's what you gotta look out for, and especially it starts drying out right by the edge. Right here, it's still nice and fluffy, but by the edges, you can go ahead and mix that with a pump sprayer. Again, it's readily available on our website. And you can see that darken right back up and match everything else. So now it's time to start stamping. Usually you need to use a release agent. This is just sand, so we're not going to use it. The first method I'm going to show you is the simplest and most basic method, which is start here. And since this is sand, it's all nice and fluffy. You don't need to be using a tamper when you're just working with sand. Usually you would. You could just stomp around on this. I think it's going to look really funny in fast motion, but it is what it is. And we go ahead and continue. Placing our yellow Z-shaped stamp. The reason we have different colors, we have yellow, green, yellow, red, and blue, is that they basically are made out of the same type of stone, but different stones were used for the different colors. So you don't get a repetitive, what's it called? You don't get a repetitive texture that's gonna make it look very artificial and not pleasing to the eye. Look copy pasted. You're gonna see later when I go onto this line, I don't want to pick the red one up because I want to continue this line by locking in to this corner. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the yellow one to continue this stamp right here. Take this yellow stamp, lock it into place. And then grab the blue stamp. The more stamps you're working with, the easier you're going to be able to do all this. You're going to have more space to walk around on it, walk around on your stamps, and the larger your stamping job, the more stamps you obviously need to get. Lock into place. Now we're going to grab a red stamp. Put in the blue, and then we're just going to continue the same way all the way down to the end. And here we got that classic bluestone type of texture. If you want to see the texture a little bit better, I don't know if you can see it as good as I can on camera, the best thing to do is take a light and only have one light source. So I'm going to turn the lights off in the warehouse. Bring my light closer down, and here you can see all the contrast and exactly how it looks. You can see in certain areas where the sand got squeezed up in between the molds, and how we fix that is with a touch-up wheel. I'm just going to show you a quick example right now. Looks good as new, but I'm going to be skipping that part in this video. I'm just going to be focusing on the stamping. If you want to see more of this, you can check out one of my videos where I do this on a stamped concrete overlay. Now here comes the annoying part. Because we did stamp onto this, the sand is no longer fluffy, it's down and compressed. It's going to be a lot harder to stamp, so we have to do the whole thing over again. I'm just going to quickly do that, and I'm only going to show it once. You can still see the texture. And now I'm going to show you the second method, which I like to call the random stamping, which you start off the same way, but then you don't follow the original pattern. I recommend using this type of method with a lot more stamps than you would with the original one, but I'm still going to only work with these three. And this is what this texture looks like. Here it is with the lights off. On to the next method. Now the third way of using these Z-shaped stamps is collaborating and using them with different molds. This mold is called 1911. Our Z-shaped stamp, let's start as we start usually. But then instead continue with stamp 1904. Then I'm gonna go ahead and grab stamp 1915. Then we can go ahead and hit it with 1912. And the last variation of stamps is 2103. Another one of our Z shapes. 1912. Our last Z shape. That won't work because we have a bald spot right there. What we can do is, instead of going in the same direction, let's do that random style. Go right here. Since I messed this up, I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with a 1915. 1914. 2103. 1914. 2103. And 1915. Now let's go ahead and review what this looks like. So here's what it looks like, and let's turn the lights off. So 1911 isn't the only Z-shaped stamp we have. We also have 2001, 2101, 2201, 2301, and a whole bunch of other type of stamps that are on our website. The link to everything I used is going to be in the description below. So you've made it to the end of my video, but now I want to ask you for a quick favor. See, the YouTube algorithm gets tricked into showing my video to a lot more people if a lot of people comment on it. So criticize me, praise me, or just ask a question. As long as you leave a comment, I'm gonna appreciate it a lot. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.